reaffirmed the United States' ironclad commitment to the Republic of Korea's security. The launches came just days after Seoul and Washington's annual Freedom Shield drills, which this year involved double the number of troops, ended on Thursday. Pyongyang this month warned that Seoul and Washington would pay a dear price over the drills, and later announced that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un had guided an artillery unit it says was capable of striking the South Korean capital. Now, the Israeli army launched on Monday an operation around Gaza's largest hospital, Al-Shifa, with witnesses reporting airstrikes on the devastated neighborhood where it is located. Israeli soldiers are currently conducting a precise operation in the area of the Shifa hospital, a statement from the military said. The operation is based on intelligence information indicating the use of the hospital by senior Hamas terrorists. Witnesses in Gaza City told newsmen they saw tanks surround the hospital site. Tens of thousands of Palestinians displaced by the war have sought shelter in the complex, according to the Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza. The Israeli army had also carried out a November operation in Al-Shifa, sparking an international outcry. Israel has repeatedly accused Hamas of running military operations from hospitals and other medical centers, claims the militant group denies. The Hamas government media office in Gaza condemned the operation, saying that the shortcoming of the Al-Shifa medical complex with tanks, drones and weapons and shooting inside it is a war crime. The health ministry in the besieged Hamas-run territory said it had received calls from people near the hospital site who claimed there were dozens of casualties. The Israeli army has carried out multiple operations in and around medical facilities across the Gaza Strip since the start of the war. The war began when Hamas launched an unprecedented attack from Gaza on October 7 that resulted in about 1,160 deaths in Israel, mostly civilians, according to reports. Palestinian militants seized about 250 Israeli and foreign hostages during the October 7 attack, but dozens were released during a week-long truce in November. Israel believes about 130 remain in Gaza, including 8 soldiers and 25 civilians who are presumed dead. Vowing to destroy Hamas, Israel has carried out a relentless bombardment and ground offensive that the health ministry in the Palestinian territory says has killed at least 31,645 people, most of them women and children. Away from that, Chinese President Xi Jinping sent a congratulatory message to Vladimir Putin on Monday, telling his Russian counterpart his re-election fully reflects the support of the Russian people, Beijing state media reported. With 99% of polling stations having submitted results, Putin has secured 87.33% of all votes cast, official election data showed Monday, according to state news agency. It was a record victory for Putin in the presidential election, where he faced no genuine competition, with the polls criticized by several Western nations as neither free nor fair. Putin heaped praise on key ally Beijing on Monday, saying he was sure that in the coming years they will only strengthen and build up their relations and achieve common successes for the benefit of the Chinese and Russian peoples, Russian state agency reported. Once socialist allies, China and Russia endured a tempestuous relationship during the later decades of the last century, but have drawn closer of late as their burgeoning friendship has come to represent a bulwark against the US-led West. The close ties have deepened even as Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine has roiled Moscow's relations with Western nations, and China has pointedly refused to condemn its allies' attack on its European neighbor. Western countries have argued that China's equivocation has given Putin much-needed political and diplomatic cover to wage an unprovoked war of aggression on Kyiv. Both leaders have previously hailed the strength of their personal friendship, having both reshaped their respective countries in their own images during protracted tenures at the helm. Xi, last October, welcomed his dear friend Putin to Beijing, where the Russian president was the guest of honor at a multilateral summit. The Chinese leader said political mutual trust between the two countries is continuously deepening, hailing their close and effective strategic coordination. Xi noted that he had met with Putin 42 times in the past decade, saying they had developed a good working relationship and a deep friendship. We'll take a break now. When we come back, we'll bring you the rest of the news. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Biscon Television for news. Now to the rest of the news. Cubans staged rare street protests on Sunday over food and electricity shortages as the country suffered long outages that left parts of the island without power for up to 14 hours a day. Electricity was restored to the city later in the day, and 2 truckloads of rice were delivered, the witness said. Social media platforms were filled with images of protests in Santiago de Cuba, a city of 510,000 people located in the east of the island. There were also images of protests in another large city, Bayamo. Cuba has been experiencing a wave of blackouts since the start of March due to maintenance works on the Antonio Guterres thermoelectric plant, the island's largest. But this weekend, the situation was worsened by a shortage of fuel needed to generate electricity. The outages left some areas such as Santiago de Cuba without power for up to 14 hours a day. The U.S. Embassy in Havana said on X that it was aware of reports of peaceful protests in Santiago, Bayamo, and other parts of Cuba. It urged the Cuban government to respect the human rights of the protesters and address the legitimate needs of the Cuban people. Cuba's power comes from 8 old thermoelectric power plants, generators, and 8 floating electricity plants leased from Turkey, which were also affected by the fuel shortage. The cash-strapped island nation imposed a more than 400% fuel price hike earlier this month as part of an economic recovery plan. The nation of 11 million is experiencing its worst economic crisis since the collapse of the Soviet bloc in the 1990s due to fallout from the coronavirus pandemic, the recent tightening of U.S. sanctions, and structural weaknesses in the economy. According to official estimates, the Cuban economy shrunk by 2% in 2023, while inflation reached 30%. Independent acts likely an underestimation. There are chronic shortages of fuel and other basic all of the goods and services consumed by Cubans. Now, Niger's government. And that's it on Biscon Television for news. Compiled and produced by Sarah Abiodun. I'm Stella Opara. Thank you for staying with us.